What's up, everyone? It's Chris with Encounter Truth, and I want to shift over and show you a really interesting scene from a great movie called National Treasure. Let's get into it.
I take it you found the treasure.
It's about 5 stories beneath your shoes.
You know, the Templars and the Freemasons believed that the treasure was too great for any one man to have, not even a king.
The treasure was too great for any one man to have, and then he talks about the Knights Templar and the Freemasons, and then we get right here to the Masonic symbol right on his finger of the Masonic ring of the Freemasons. And let's just keep going real quick.
That's why they went to such lengths to keep it hidden.
That's right.
They went to such lengths to keep it hidden. This is truth in plain sight. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I never really realized all the hidden symbology in this movie until my wife and I were actually talking about it the other night whenever I was researching, and I was like, I had this epiphany because it was the church scene of Trinity Church that we're going to take a quick look at. This video is going to be about really the Vatican, Rome, what are they hiding underneath St. Peter's Basilica, and what drew this was this movie. And so let's keep going.
The founding fathers believe the same thing about government. I figure their solution will work for the treasure too.
Give it to the people.
Divide it amongst the Smithsonian.
Yeah, let's divide it amongst the Smithsonian so that they can hide all the artifacts and the really cool stuff that they found down there, because that's who's suppressing the truth, is all of these governmental figures, right? So let's take a look at the Trinity Church in the movie that they go underground to discover Solomon's hidden treasure. This is really cool. And isn't it interesting that supposedly Solomon's hidden treasure is in the Americas, in New York of all places? And it's also interesting that back whenever settlers or the immigrants would come across the Atlantic Ocean into the New York harbor, there is actually, right as they're passing the Statue of Liberty, whom could very well be Lucifer. If you've seen the painting in 1797, they're so identical alike. Statue of Liberty and or Lady Liberty and Apollo or Lucifer, identical individuals here. And the fact that on the bottom of the Statue of Liberty there's a chain that shows it's broke, and we know in Revelation 20 about how there was an angel who went down to the bottomless pit to release Satan a little season, right? Well, let's take a look at. Oh, anyway, what I was saying was that when they come in through the New York harbors, they're passing the Statue of Liberty. They come into what is called a town, New Babylon. Also very interesting, in lieu of just all of the history and the hidden truths right here in plain sight, and they often do it to us through these movies. And so let's look at the Trinity Church. Yes, it's an old world building, and when we look at it, just another magnificent, immaculate Gothic Renaissance or Gothic Revival style cathedral that was founded, where did it say? 1846. And really interesting how it was opened in 1846, and it had also 23 bells. Some interesting things about bell research when you get into the bells. Let's go back over here and just look through some of these photos of this church, and you can see even in here some of this beautiful looking design. Again, they don't make buildings like this no more. Look at the one in the background over here. Just a glass stick of steel and glass, but we have this amazing structure of this church right here, and just a beautiful inside with the stained glass windows, the high arches, perfect symmetry and geometry. It's a really cool building overall. And I'm sure there's more than what meets the eye here, especially in the National Treasure scene when they go down below it. If I can see if we can check out a view of. So it's pretty cool how it shows on filming here. Now, obviously, they portray this, and I don't know, I haven't done research on exactly where they did the filming for this. I would assume it's probably not actually underground of this church if it's that very old, but who knows? We could look that up and probably verify where they actually did the scene, you know, where they could recreate this to make it look like it's somewhere underground. It's probably just a wooden staircase in a warehouse to showcase. But, you know, there's probably a real underground tunnel or an underground whatever beneath that church, you know, under the streets. There's so many, if you do some research on tunnels, there's so many tunnels that run under these old world buildings. And obviously, there's the scene where it shows all the treasure, and it's like the lost scrolls of the Alexandrian library, you know. But it is so funny how they talk about let's give it amongst the people and the government, you know, the Smithsonian, just a bunch of things that don't add up. And so when we look at the Vatican, even, you know, there's supposedly catacombs underneath the Vatican, and the smallest independent nation in the world with its own currency, its own army. You know, there's a lot of interesting things when we look into Rome and the Vatican and the papacy. And like, what if what if the Vatican wasn't just a religious institution, but like the gatekeeper of lost civilizations, pre-flood technology, and, you know, the true timeline of humanity? Like, what if buried beneath St. Peter's Basilica are the remains of giants, forbidden scrolls, and ancient artifacts that really prove everything that we've been told about in history is a lie? And that's what I want to look at here is, you know, pulling back the veil on the most powerful religious empire the world has ever known and what they've never wanted you to see. And I think that it was a great segue from the National Treasure movie and the ending scene there to come into here. Just want to welcome you back to the channel, Encountered Truth, where we uncover the suppressed chapters of history and expose the deception behind the global power structures, and we really just challenge the status quo. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Click that little bell notification if you want to be notified when I put out new videos. I try to aim for every Sunday to release a new video. Sometimes, given my work schedule, I do work a full-time job. I might put one out on Friday or Monday, but I always try to have a new video every week. And I always let you know in the posting sections of YouTube if I'm running late or whatnot, or if I can't. Subscribe, leave your comments below. Let me know what you think of the Vatican and Rome and the papacy and the National Treasure movie. And if there's any other movies that you want me to do a deep dive on, or that you're aware of where they hide, they do it in every movie. They really do. I love looking in movies nowadays. I obviously don't like wasting my time watching them for entertainment purposes, but I really love watching them to see what they're trying to put in plain sight. So if there's any movies that you can recall that you know they do this with, definitely let me know. And today I definitely want to dive deep into the alternative history of the Vatican, its pagan roots, Jesuit infiltration, secret archives, and how it may be connected to ancient pre-Adamic civilizations and even off-world knowledge. I went down just a 1 hour deep dive. I'm not going to do that here. I'll make this video very concise, but let's talk about the Vatican Hill and its pagan past. You know, most people don't know that the Vatican Hill was not originally Christian, or maybe you do. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. The historian Stefan Heid in the early Christian cemeteries of Rome confirms that the Vatican Hill was a necropolis, a burial ground where pagan rituals, sacrifices, and oracles were practiced, especially divination and augury. And that's really a fascinating truth there, because legend has it that this is supposedly where Peter was martyred, and then his tomb is beneath here in the catacombs of the Vatican. And the word Vatican comes from a Latin word that actually means prophecy or divination. Interesting. I think it was in Latin, Vaticinia. And the hill was associated with spirit communication and the occult long before the church ever built on it. What does it mean when the holiest site in Christendom sits on top of an ancient pagan temple of the dead? That's very interesting to think and wonder about, right? And then there's the secret archives. You know, supposedly there's 53 miles of shelving underneath the Vatican site itself, known as the Vatican Apostolic Archive, formerly known as the Secret Archive. And according to researcher Dr. John O'Malley, who's a Georgetown University graduate, the archive holds documents dating back to the 8th century, but access is heavily restricted even to Vatican staff. And some of the really interesting rumors that are inside here are scrolls from before the Council of Nicaea, of Constantine, lost gospels like the Gospel of Thomas or Mary Magdalene, or even scrolls of the Book of Enoch, pre-flood artifacts tied to Genesis 6, ancient maps that contradict today's geography. That would be really interesting to take a look at. I know over on Leaving Babylon, their channel, check it out if you're not familiar with it, has some phenomenal videos on ancient maps. And there's even correspondence with a dictator in Germany. Careful with my wording here to not get red flagged. Documented in David Kurtzer's The Pope and Mussolini. There was correspondence with a German dictator in the 1940s. We all know about him and his little mustache, and you know who he is. His initials are Hitler Adolf. And why does a religious institution need to guard ancient knowledge with more secrecy than most governments? Then we get into like Jesuits and timeline manipulation. So the Jesuits that were founded in 1540 are often described as missionaries and educators, but in reality, the truth seekers like you and I, and then there's former insiders who believe that they are Vatican's secret intelligence agency, kind of like their own little CIA. And according to Malachi Martin, who was a Jesuit priest turned whistleblower in The Keys of This Blood, the Jesuits' ultimate goal was global domination through education, infiltration, and control. And so they helped propagate futurism, a theology created by Francisco Ribera, interestingly, because people who want to refute preterism will often say that it was Francisco Ribera of the Jesuits who formulated that view. So that's something that we want to do some research on to figure out, the modern term preterism, in lieu of like kind of what I point to in terms of prophecy being fulfilled in AD 70 with the destruction of the temple, and much of the prophecies of Revelation being fulfilled before AD 70, and that the futurism, eschatology, doctrines of future pre-tribulation rapture, and then Messiah's second coming, and what have you. A lot of that was arranged and created back then by him to move prophecy away from the Vatican and delay the timeline of Revelation. So there's some theorists that even believe they even worked with royal societies to erase the true millennial reign of Christ and fabricate the Dark Ages, compressing or stretching timelines for world control. And that would make total sense if we think about some of these old world buildings that were built here by angels or built by some of the saints during the millennial reign of Christ. Like, that would be everything that Satan would want to do, is to confuse people of where they are in their timeline and push a narrative so big and so large that would get everybody away from their Bible, their scriptures, and believing into scientism, history, the mainstream historical narrative, evolution, Darwinism, the heliocentric model, because all of that really does push you away from there ever being a creator, but questioning evolution, that we have progressed from an amoeba in a little cesspool of bacteria that has evolved to grow legs over time, and we went from monkeys and apes to people and what have you, but obviously that has been disproven in itself. So the thing, going back into the national treasure part about the Smithsonian, so there's been so many cover-ups with the Smithsonian, especially giant bones. In the 1800s, there were newspapers across America that reported giant skeletons, many over 9 feet tall, found in native burial grounds. And I believe if you look up the My Lunch Break channel, phenomenal research this gentleman has done. He's done a lot of research on videos showing these ancient burial mounds that underneath had elongated skulls and bones that represent, giant Nephilim possibly. Who knows, and obviously this stuff is like totally off limits to the mainstream narrative, right? And even if we do like a quick research over here, like over here and talk about this with y'all, giant bones, America, this reports of giant human skeletons found in North America are common. See, like, even this, and go figure, this is Google's AI overview, they're generally considered to be a hoax. So I mean, we have to do some more digging on this, because obviously, Google's going to suppress a lot of this knowledge. So I'm not going to, in this video, go to other, I typically use Brave, which is another browser that doesn't suppress a lot of this information. But there are, different things that we can look into on here to find. But if we go back, Sources like the Evening News, Marion, Indiana, 1912, and the New York Times, multiple articles from 1880 to 1915 documented these finds. And where did they all go? So, according to researcher Richard Dewhurst in The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, these bones were turned over to the Smithsonian, which made them vanish. Why? Well, because the giants are going to confirm the Genesis 6 narrative, not evolution, as I was just saying. So, if Genesis 6 is true, and if you believe the Bible like I do, and this is not just a mythology or a story from the Old Testament, but rather it means that we have had fallen angel DNA and hybrid bloodlines walking the earth, which leads me into pre-flood technology and possible pre-Adamic civilizations. And all of this is not going to be in the Protestant canon of Scripture, which is why when we look at books like Enoch, who Jude, the half-brother of Jesus Christ, quoted, and you would think that if Jude had quoted this, Jesus would have corrected him and they wouldn't have put it in the canon. The Book of Enoch describes fallen angels teaching mankind metal making with different alloys. And I'm stepping over here to grab my Book of Enoch that I usually have behind me. And this is a edition that was compiled by Ronald K. Brown. And a really good book with really good commentary. And it reads as inspired scripture. So I'll leave you to think with your own opinion. All of these here are obviously my research and my opinions that I want to share, because I do believe that there needs to be an awareness brought about this. And the Book of Enoch definitely describes the watchers, and there's both good and bad watchers. And I should do an entire video series on the Book of Enoch, because I believe that the more people who become aware of not being afraid to reading the Book of Enoch, of being led astray into these conspiracy theories, because people who deeply research the truth are usually labeled as conspiracy theorists. And it oftentimes turns out that our conspiracies turn up to be true. And so in Genesis 4 through 6, we see a hint of early civilization, art, cities, and musical instruments. So could the Vatican really be hiding evidence of pre-Adamic civilizations like Atlantis or Tartaria? Maps from before the flood, or even off-world artifacts from Genesis 6 style visitations? Author and Vatican researcher Cris Putnam, he claimed that before his death, that the church was preparing for extraterrestrial disclosure, not as aliens, but as angelic beings from other dimensions. And this may be why the Vatican owns one of the most powerful space observatories in the world, Lucifer, at Mount Graham, Arizona. Isn't that interesting? Let's take a look at that. So this is it over here, and it's interesting. Let's go back. Go back one more. Lucifer. It's a utility with a camera and integral field unit. Large binocular telescope, near infrared spectroscopic utility. Really interesting. Does the Vatican have a telescope called Lucifer? This one says Lucifer was never the name of a telescope, let alone a telescope owned by the Vatican. Why does the Vatican have a telescope named Lucifer? So you'll probably have, I think you're confused, your facts aren't quite correct. So maybe someone, I haven't done a lot of research on actually this is just live research with me. Again, we're operating with Google, so bear with me on that. We can probably do some actually cross examination to find out why, or possibly why, there's even a connection with a telescope owned by the Vatican here in Arizona. Interesting that it's in Arizona, especially when you think about with the Grand Canyon and the different speculations of the Smithsonian from the early 1900s and what researchers have found there. So, obviously, what if history isn't missing pieces? What if the Vatican is sitting on the missing pieces and using them to keep the world in spiritual bondage, especially during this time of a little season, according to Revelation 20, verse 3. And so if the truth about the pre-flood world, the Nephilim, ancient technology, and prophetic timelines were revealed, religion, science, and politics would collapse overnight, right? It really would. It would prove everything about this book to be true, and everything that we know about the Bible to be true, and it would just collapse their entire narrative like that, and probably cause straight anarchy. And it's historical. Biblical history is right. And so if you want to keep digging and uncover the suppressed timelines and explore the deception behind Satan's little season, I ask you again to subscribe to this channel, hit that bell, leave a comment with what you want me to dig deeper on or expose next in this topic here about the Vatican. And there's a lot of research that is going on in terms of papacy, and what is actually being hidden in terms of the Smithsonian. And so some other things I'll leave you with about the Jesuits. Publicly, they were the Society of Jesus, again, founded by Ignatius of Loyola in 1540. They were missionaries, educators, scientists, and scholars, defenders of the Pope. But from alternative history, they are the military arm of the Vatican, trained in infiltration, deception, and control. They orchestrated the Counter-Reformation to destroy Protestantism. They created futurism via Francisco Ribera to divert end-time prophecy away from the papacy. They are embedded in politics, education, and finance globally. They're behind events like the French Revolution, World Wars, and Central Banking. They swear in extreme blood oaths to use any means necessary to serve Rome and the Pope. They are often linked to the founding of the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jesuit-trained professor, and then the creation of modern false timelines through control of education and rewriting of church history and biblical interpretation to hide, in my opinion, Satan's little season. So if we go back to this time and understand, especially around 1776, and know about all of these various revolutions and world wars that were occurring at that time, there's a lot of interesting connections that we can make. And when we look at, again, the Smithsonian, who was founded in 1846, publicly known for preserving American history, right, as they want us to know. But again, researchers allege it plays a central role in historical cover-ups, especially regarding giant human skeletons found across North America, like I said before, anywhere from 8 to 20 foot tall, unusual artifacts that don't fit the mainstream historical narrative, and then suppressing evidence of Tartaria, pre-flood tech, and ancient high civilizations. And there are numerous reports, and maybe we can do another video about this, from the 1800s, early 1900s, of giant bones discovered in native burial grounds and mounds, advanced copper tools and tablets inscribed with Hebrew-like characters, and then again the skeletons of elongated skulls. And allegedly these artifacts were sent over to the Smithsonian and never seen again. And some insiders claim that they were destroyed or hidden in vaults to preserve the narrative of evolution, colonial dominance, and a sanitized historical timeline. So lots of things to consider here about where we're at in our timeline and how, if we are truly in the little season, which I tend to believe we are. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it for what you will, but I do believe this is the true test to understand who is for God and walking with him, who is for themselves, and who is for the world, and who is working with the enemy, and who is still deceived. And so here I am as a whistleblower for putting out there this information and being brave, and going to be labeled a heretic and a crazy conspiracy theorist, but that's okay, because when you seek the truth and you speak the truth, you're going to be hated. And Jesus even said that there will be those in times who will be hated for my namesake. And we know that his people, the scribes and Pharisees that he was rebuking at those times, killed the prophets, and their blood was on their hands because they were not willing to hear the truth. And so many times for speaking the truth, they want to silence us, but that's okay. We're going to challenge the status quo every single time, to know that what it is we're up against is a lie of the enemy, the adversary, and we already know how the end turns out. We win. So God bless you all. Thank you for being here. Share this video if you like it. Leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are, and greatly appreciate you tuning in. Till next time. Bye-bye.